Okay, so we good on all that. So that was kind of the promo, quick sampling stuff, things like that. I wanted to make sure that I took the time to do this. This is the purpose of today's kind of call. Okay, is I was thinking of this, and sometimes it's easy to push all the systems, and I talk a lot about systems, and I talk about how tos, but how to, if you don't know your why, or you're not inspired to do something, all the how to's in the world don't put it together. Okay, and this is different than motivation, by the way. Okay, and what it came down to was it just popped into my head yesterday when I was thinking about this, that it's a great quote from Abraham Lincoln. Says, if I had eight hours in a day to chop down a tree, I'd spend 6 sharpening my axe. Okay, so what I want to show you is, let me find my cursor, my mouse here, is I want to talk to you guys about the process of a business like this for a sustained period of time. You know that one slide that I've used multiple times where success is getting a large group of people to do a few easy tasks over a sustained period of time? This is what it comes down to, okay? Most of it is this, is you have to be to build a business like this, if you want to build this as a networking business, as an asset that continues to spin off cash, there are some things that you have to do mentally to continue the process to prepare for that, to kind of go the course, to go the distance. Okay, I promise you that the majority of people that I've ever seen succeed in this industry wasn't that they had a lot more skills than you or anything like that. Most of it was just that slight edge consistency of doing something on a regular basis. Okay, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you chop down a tree? One chop at a time, right? Because everybody in today's day and age, we do want quantum, instant gratification, instant pudding, and microwave popcorn. I literally get mad when Stacy asks me to make popcorn and I ask, can I make the microwave kind, right? Because I don't want to wait 4 minutes. I want 2 minutes, right? So it's just human nature these days. But there's some things that we can't really circumvent for success. Now, I have a suggestion to you if you'll listen to me. I think that it can be a major impact on your business and your career if you were to go out and get this book by Art Williams, okay? Or if you have it, I would suggest that you reread it. I usually either read this book manually or listen to the audio version of this book at least once or twice a year. And now I want to tell you the story behind this book. And you can see that it's kind of tattered and it's got some stuff, it's got some highlights in it and stuff like this. So I want you to I'm going to take you back in time and tell you the story behind this book. So I'm about 27 years old. I was coming out of the bar business. I had no college degree, no business background, really rough around the edges. I cussed like a vice cop. I mean, every other word was an F-bomb out of me. I'm just being transparent here. It was brutal, right? I mean, because I bounced for a living. Okay, so I had people that were going to physically try to kill me, that I had to have that mentality to counter that. Okay, so you can kind of see where I was. So no, trust me. I mean, I literally, the first live presentation I did, I used probably 5 cuss words during the presentation, and I look back on it now and just shake my head, go, oh my gosh, it's just hilarious. But anyhow, I need you to know this out front, being positive, that wherever you are, there's hope for you. Okay. So the first company I'm in was called Excel Communications. It was a telecom network marketing company. And it was around for probably 8-9 years in the United States, only United States, and had to do with long distance being deregulated. Okay, that's not the point. That's not the point. The point is that as I got involved, some people kind of took me under their wing. My sponsor that got me in, after, this is a true story, called me up and said, hey, Mike, he was one of the guys that I knew from the bar business. he said, hey, there's this guys that introduced me some stuff. I want you to come to this meeting. I think you can make a lot of money. So I thought it was a job interview. So he says, Monday they're doing a hotel meeting. So I called him up and said, hey, I'm ready to go. He says, it's 7:30. He says, well, I can't go. I'm actually fighting with my girlfriend. I said, all right, no problem. He said, let's go next week. I said, okay. So next week comes around, and I call him up and say, hey, I want to go to this thing. I'd love to see what you got. And he said, oh, you're not going to believe this, but I'm fighting with my other girlfriend. I'm like, man, you're an idiot, like that. And he says, and so next week I call him and he says, guess what? They both dumped me. Let's go. And so I went to a presentation. It was so boring. I almost fell asleep in it. But at the last part of the presentation, it was like an hour and 10 minutes long. This guy showed this one page that had a lot of money on it, like how do you get paid in the comp plan or whatever. And he was a really boring speaker. And I ended up saying, you know what? If that guy can make any money, I got a shot. It's all I could think of, right? I go, it kind of makes sense. I met a couple guys. I talked to a guy later after the meeting, and this one guy was making like $3,000 a month after like 2 years, which might as well have been $3 million a month to me, right? I'm like, I'm in. And so I get in. I had to borrow money. I'm sorry, no, I didn't have to borrow money. I sold some CDs. You remember when you actually could sell CDs back in the day? I sold some CDs and pawned some CDs and sold my dresser. And so I put my clothes on the floor to get the money to join this company. This is a real story. So I join. Now I'm all excited, and my sponsor gets me in. And this is pre-internet. This is pre-cell phone. This is pre any communication. So I call him up. I can't get a hold of him. I call him up next week. Can't get a hold of him. Call him up. I keep calling him, trying to figure out what I need to do, and couldn't get a hold of him. And then finally, after a month, he calls me back and said, hey, I've been in Florida. Turns out I had an uncle that passed away, didn't have any kids, and he left me $3.2 million. This is a true story. My sponsor, who was a year younger than me, gets me into my first company, doesn't train me, I have no idea how to do anything, inherits $3.2 million. I said, so I take it you're not motivated to do this business? He goes, not really. And I said, okay, well, thanks. He says, well, there's somebody I think I'll set you up with. I'll send you his number. That was my introduction to the industry. The true story. So somebody calls me and says, hey, I heard you're excited. This is when the meetings are, blah, blah, blah. So I then end up meeting some local guys. They take me under their wing. And here's what happened. We went to Atlanta, Georgia for an event, for a training. And we were down there. And then on the way back, we had the opportunity. The number one money earner, Paul Orbison, was from Kentucky. And I lived in Columbus, Ohio. So you kind of got to drive through when you're going from Georgia to there to go through Kentucky. And one of the guys that was with me was a guy that grew up with Paul. So they were friends and they knew each other, and he knew all about Paul. And he said, hey, I'll call. He called him while we were on our way up. He was one of the only guys I knew that had a cell phone. He calls Paul up, and Paul invites us to come to his house. He was going to go to a movie that night with his wife and cancels it. So Paul, at the time that I meet him, when we go to his house, so this is the guy that I had seen on the company magazines. I'd heard about him being in for 8 years. And when we get there to his house, he answers the door in a white t-shirt, exactly like this. He hadn't shaved in probably 4 or 5 days. He had sweatpants on, tube socks. One of them was floppy, right? It wasn't tight. And he had a chew in, like a dip, a tobacco chew, like that. He's like, hey, what's up, y'all? What's going on? Like that, like total Kentucky accent. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is this the same guy? And so we walk in, and Chris, my friend, is talking to Paul. And Paul, at the time, Paul's backstory was he was a school teacher that just gets in this company, starts staying consistent, gives all these stories about how it's not working. And we're talking, and I'm sitting there like this, because to me, it's like an Elvis sighting. Like I just, I thought he was going to answer the door with a golden scepter and a crown and anoint me as, Ohio's newest millionaire kind of thing. And so while we're sitting there, we're sitting there and I'm like at the edge of my seat listening, you know, and all I could think of is when we walked into his living room, he had his small, he didn't have a big house, you know, kind of same size as, you know, middle class America house. And he's watching the Weather Channel. And I'm thinking to myself, man, I know people that chew. I know people wear sweatpants. I know people that watch Weather Channel. I know people that were teachers. I mean, all I'm doing is making this guy real in my eyes to myself. I'm like, man. So we're sitting there, and on his desk, coffee table, is a stack of papers about this thick, like a little bigger than probably a large city phone book. And Chris looks at him and says, hey, Chris looks at him and says, is that your report for your monthly, your downline report? He's like, no. And he's like, well, what is it? He goes, that's the people I've gotten paid on this month. And I'm like, what? And he says, how was it? And he says, well, pick it up. And it was because back then we didn't have computers to show your downline report. It was all printed thing. You got it once a month. And he pulls this thing out and you scroll the very bottom so you can see the totals. And it was for $656,000 for the month. For the month, $656,000. And I literally felt like my soul jumped out of the room, ran around and jumped back in. And I'm like, I literally said, that's impossible. And he looked at me and goes, ain't that something? And I'm like, ain't that something? Are you kidding me? Ain't that something what? And he's like, ain't this business neat? And I'm like, I literally couldn't comprehend that somebody even made that much money in a lifetime, let alone, and here's in my head, I'm thinking, how is he going to spend all of that before more comes? That's all I thought. I had no idea of investing or anything like that. And so we're sitting there and I said, how did that happen? How is that possible? And he says, well, he said, Mike, in this type of business, it's not what you do, it's what you start. And it kind of went like over my head, and he probably could tell I was a little puzzled. And he says, well, did you sign anybody up last month? And I'm like, yeah, I did. I signed a guy named Dave. And he says, like, he goes, well, this is in alphabetical order. Look to see if Dave's in there. So I go through this big report, find the guy's name, and sure enough, there's my guy that I enrolled a month ago next to it, and it shows that he earned like $35 off of it. And he goes, Mike, do I know Dave? And I'm like, nope. He goes, in fact, do I know you? And I go, nope. And he goes, who got you in? And who got him in? And we tracked back a guy that he'd enrolled 8 years ago of the genealogy of these people. And he go, ain't that something? He goes, this thing's like getting on an escalator. And I'm like, what? And he goes, sometimes you just get on it and it just keeps going up. And I'm like, how did this guy make all this money? And I said, that's amazing. So, and then here's one of my genius things that I said. He's sitting in his chair, spitting in his cup, and because he wasn't he was spitting in his cup, and he's got a bookshelf behind him, right? So he's in the living room, the bookshelf's on there, and I look over and go, I look at this bookshelf because I don't have any books in my place because I didn't read a book since like the third grade, and I look at it and I go, you read all those books? He goes, well, not all of them. And that was pretty smart, right? I'm genius. And I look at him because I'm thinking that and he says, I said, wow, that's a lot of books, thinking real smart. I can't think of anything smart to say to this guy. And he goes, I got something for you, Mike. I said, what? So he walks over to the bookshelf and he grabs his copy, and it's got like duct tape on it and it's like falling apart. And he says, Mike, here was the phrase that changed my life. Mike, this here's the Bible in network marketing. Go get yourself a copy. And he set it down. That was it. And I was like, if this guy made $656,000 this month and just pulled out of a couple hundred books I just saw on his shelf, and he said, this is the one, I'm going to go read it. And so I went the following day when I got back to Columbus. I found it at Barnes & Noble, I bought myself a copy, and then every night I sat there and I would read a little bit at a time, and highlight it. And what was so amazing about this book, in case you don't know the history of Art Williams was a former teacher and football coach down in Georgia. And then he went on to become his dad died, and they found out that the insurance they had didn't work, couldn't take care of his mom or whatever. He got really mad, and he figured out what was happening in the insurance industry, and he started the largest term life insurance company in the world by basically grassroots, just talking the story, telling the story, and telling it with passion. And he basically put it all down as to how he did it in this book. Okay, all you can do is all you can do, and this one's gotten me through pretty much my career of this book, because the chapter, it's really easy to understand. Like, he talks about the power of believing. He talks about power principle 1, you got to demand for yourself happiness and success. And it's literally, the majority of it's mindset, because like I said here earlier, is I have a tendency sometimes to be OCD when it comes to systems, and think systems, and think, this is how you do it, this is how you do it, that type of thing. But the most successful people I've ever run into in my career were not super savvy in most cases. They were tenacious. A lot of them have referenced this book, okay? And they referenced it because the mindset was the most important thing. So to go back to the slide I showed you of sharpening the axe, is I have to be careful to do the same thing, like to really understand why people join a business. Nobody joins a business because they want to sell drops, right? You don't join a business to sell drops. When you first signed the dotted line, that's what it means back in the day. But when you send in your thing, there was something inside you that you saw with a vision, your own personal vision, a glimpse of a future of what the business could do for you, that made you do it. And you have to keep that at the forefront of your business. Otherwise it gets stale. Otherwise you don't remember why. Otherwise it's hard to dial the phone. Otherwise it's hard to send the text. And that's why I applaud you guys that are regulars on here, or you regularly watch the videos and stuff like that, because that's part of taking it to the bank. Basically you're investing in yourself, you're taking the time. And it's not, and a lot of times too, it's not, you don't have a successful day every single day, Paul. And if you guys want, I'm trying to think where I have it. If you go to my YouTube channel, Mike Healy, if you go to YouTube and go Mike Healy, and then you type in, there's a search on any channel. If you type in Paul Orbison, different way of thinking, I have the audio he did at a live event. That is something I've listened to, I guarantee you, over 1,000 times. And it's him talking about the business, but there is absolutely nothing in there that's business. It's all basically like thinking different. It's why it's called a different way of thinking, and he talks, one of the things that was what triggered me to tell you guys that was, about not having fun every day. He says, well, you ain't having fun every day anyhow. I'm like, that's a great point. It was just funny the way he said it, and he would talk about how he was telling his dad how he was going to be successful. And his dad looked at him and goes, well, if you're so smart, why ain't you rich? That kind of thing. And just the stories and the way he explained it was hilarious. Just, it was like, it resonates with you when you listen to it. Okay. And he doesn't talk about the company. I don't even think he even one time says it in there, but I can literally do a lot of that video. I can do most of that audio verbatim when I'm, if I actually listen to it, I can almost go through the whole thing. But he gets a lot of what he taught and how he acted from this. Okay, so that's what's so important. If you put those two together, it's an incredible opportunity to do something. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I know we're at about 45 minutes in, and I thought I'd just throw something, give you a little different feedback, then this is how you use rapid funnel. This is how you do this. This is you know, Facebook ads, all that stuff. Cause none of that means anything. Like literally none of that stuff means anything. If you don't have the mindset and most importantly, the heart to kind of do it, you know, like I look at my kids when they play football, or if you've ever played a sport, you don't run wind sprints because wind sprints are fun. You know, you run wind sprints so that when the game happens, you're ready for it, but you don't even want to play the game. You want the glory of the victory, right? You know, so it's just this something that's deeper, deeper, deeper. And you have to, and a lot of times you have to dig to find out what the deep is. Okay. And that's, cause I'm the same as any other human being out there. I mean, I know I put a bold face on most of the time, but there's days that I'm frustrated that I'll sit there or just want to smash my head in a wall, right? Because I get frustrated and don't know what to do. And then I sit there and I finally, when I calm myself down, I'm like, I'm making it hard. And it's not supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be inspired. And so by doing that and changing that mindset, that's kind of what because I've been really busy the last like 2 weeks, like too busy with, you know, a lot of thinking projects, because I've got some other businesses that I do marketing for companies, you know, I got other side stuff, right? That kind of thing. And sometimes you can get overwhelmed and you can forget about the freedom. You can forget about why you do what you do. And when that happens, it's just like goes like this, and you get nothing done. You just stay even Steven. And I'm just sitting there, and it was literally, I'm sitting sitting down, chilling, and all I hear is sharpen the axe. Like I literally just heard that in my head, sharpen the axe, and I'm like, sharpen the axe. I'm like, I remember that quote. I remember that quote. I remember how it was presented in a few trainings that I've seen over the years, and it got me thinking. And I'm like, that's it. That's what that's what the holdup is. That's what the hang up is. That's where the wall was. And after doing that, I'm like, okay, so what I have to remember to do is not be, be process focused, but the one step behind that is process is fairly easy, right? Give some people some samples and follow up with them. Congratulations, you've been trained in 5 seconds. But knowing why I'm doing it and staying on that path is way more important than everything else, because everything else falls together. So we're doing the process of it, but it's being driven by the vision, right? So that's kind of the thing. So anyhow, anybody got any comments about what I just said or anything like that? I'd love some feedback if you don't mind. Got to unmute yourself if you're going to say something, though. Paul?
Hey, I couldn't stop laughing because that story is hilarious, because I think I was in Excel. That was like one of the first ones.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And I remember going to Dallas and going on stage, or not going on stage, and seeing him on stage, walking in his cowboy boots, jeans, white t-shirt, and just talking like that. And so I just remember that going, holy cow, that is amazing. And that was my first kind of experience of like, what is all this, you know? Yeah. Great story, but that's so what I remember him about, you know, and just like kind of the same thing. Wow, that guy is like amazing, but look at him. I didn't, you know.
Crazy, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Anybody else?
Mike.
Yeah.
What was that? You said look him up under your YouTube, Paul Orbison, and the title of the talk was what?
Different way of thinking.
A different way of thinking. Thank you.
I'm gonna try to find it for you guys right now.
There's a great, really good clip too. Well, it's on your channel too. I remember I watched it numerous times.
There it is. I'm gonna put it in the chat. Sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
No, isn't. Then you've got that cool. Is that the same one? I watched it on the YouTube channel. Is that the one with him going and speak on stage and just getting all fired up?
Yeah. So I have two on my channel. I'm gonna put both of them in the chat right now.
They're really, really good. Yeah.
The first one that I sent, the first link is a different way of thinking, and then this one was him at another one, and it's just as funny. I mean, the second audio is not great because this is back in the day when you recorded stuff with a cassette player, But those two things right there, like if you listen to those two things, it'll change it'll rock your world. I'm going to listen to that today when I mow my lawn. I'm going to make that a priority. When I listen to that, I'm going to listen to that. And when I mow my lawn, I'm going to do that.
Hey, Paul.
Yeah. So Paul.
Yeah.
We were in that same Coliseum in Dallas.
Way back in the day in the 80s, oh no, 90s.
Early 90s, yeah.
Yep. In fact, you know what's funny is that was my first time I bought cowboy boots. I thought I had to be cool because I was in Dallas. It was 115 degrees. And I remember my best friend, who was the one who sponsored me in the business, we went and wanted to look like Dallas people. So I remember that, get my cowboy, but I think I still got them somewhere. But funny stories, yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you, Ada. I see Ada said, thank you. This has been so inspiring. Perfect. That was the objective, is inspire you, get some direction on here. But yeah. So also I'm gonna last kind of thing, if we're good here, is I think starting next week at this thing, the Zoom, I'm gonna actually start having you guys do more trainings with me. Okay. This was another thing I started thinking about back in the, of like, this is how, I can't just be the only talking head half the time. And people have to, because I understand now, I'm actually to the point that a lot of people see me, sorry, I got the sniffles. They see me and I don't look duplicatable any longer because I've been doing this so long, and it's actually a hindrance. Okay, it actually hurts my business because of that. So what I want to start doing now is I'll throw some fun stuff out and I'll keep you up to speed, but I want to have the newer people train, because that was I think what drives some of the biggest companies, is the fact that when people join a Zoom, they see somebody who's been in a half an hour that signed somebody up talk how they did it. And it's really, they don't have a clue. And the rest of the people that are viewing it go, what did I say when I first saw people? Basically, the first presentation I ever saw, remember what I said at the very beginning? If that guy can do it, I can. And that's how duplication really gets down to it, and stuff like that. So I want to, and you guys need to help keep me on track with this, is to try to dial it down to where we have more newer people saying some stuff. You know what I mean? Like say, hey, next week, we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about customer gathering, and anybody that's signed somebody up, I don't care if you've been in a half an hour, you need to be a trainer. The other thing too is, by getting people to do that, it gets you out of your comfort zone to start taking leadership actions and ownership of your own, your own group kind of thing, and building your own team. Because it can't, if it's just followers, then you're just going on a jog, right? You want people that are become independent leaders, and that's one way to do it. So I'm gonna try to figure out how that looks, and you understand where I'm going with that. So, I'll be pointing out stuff. Oh, last thing I forgot, this was Cowrie's wife Jenny is actually going to interview Pauline, which you guys have seen on here. Pauline's the short blonde hair lady that's really knowledgeable about homeopathic and stuff like that. I believe it's going to be, if it's not, I think it's this week. He's going to drop the info in the Papa Drop group, and it's going to be kind of like an Eastern medicine type format of the thing, because that's like her background of, the traditional. It's not, I don't know her complete background, but she's doing really good. Like, she's signing people up on a regular basis, putting diamond, getting people signed up a diamond package. And it's because people know she knows what she's talking about when it comes to health products. So it's going to be a product only thing. So it's going to be a really cool thing to check out, that I think we're going to be able to share with people, another resource and so on. So cool beans.
Hey, Mike, I just wanted one thing. Last week, I wanted to make a comment that asking about the duplicatability of it, because I was so glad you just said that about not being able to duplicate, because when people look at Mike Healy and, YouTube expert, knows everything about that. And that's really, it's impressive, but it's really hard to say, well, how can I relate that to my life? How can I start a YouTube channel, blah, blah, blah. And, I'm so glad to hear you say that, because it is, you want rapid duplication and not have to build a YouTube channel to succeed in the business.
Yeah. And that's my fault, because, sometimes when you do this long enough, or so long, you think, oh, I gotta reinvent myself. I gotta show myself as an expert. And it's not that. I mean, people are attracted to results, but they relate better to people that they can relate to. And so by doing it the opposite way, I've seen that it doesn't work as well. I sometimes don't remember that. And I mean, I remember, I have done this in multiple trainings. I mean, the one company that I mention a lot of times, Zango, I think the one reason I made so much money in that is I purposely stayed as dumb as possible. I literally, and I would say that in trainings, I say, hey, if you want to make a lot of money, just stay duplicatable, stay as dumb as possible. Say, I don't know how this works, and just be enthusiastic. And that was what it was. But a lot of times I think, because it's not you guys, it's me that's trying to keep myself entertained of new stuff to show people, because I think, oh, well, I've just shown them this, when in fact it's get back to the basics and inspiring people versus trying to educate them on fancy things, because that's what really drives the business, is people see people that look like they're having fun and they can relate to them, and it's a simple message, and they know that they can do that. And when that happens, that's how this thing goes. Boom, 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 boom. 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 5,000, 12,000, 24, 2,048. Right? That one. So I've said the power of one a handful of times. So yeah, thanks, Ralph, for the input. Anybody else?
Teacher becomes the student.
There you go. Exactly. All right, we good? All right, so I'm gonna get this edited down. I'm probably just gonna start it with the story, because a lot of people have seen some of the other stuff, and I'll post it in the Facebook group. So if you have people on the team, I'm gonna have it to where it starts kind of at the story that I talked about to get this, where we are, and then make sure you tag your people in there and so on. And I'm gonna put this. I'll probably pull that part and put it on my YouTube channel as well, if you need to share it that way also. So, all right,
Hey.
we good?
Hey, Mike, real quick, I was just going to give you kudos. I had somebody on my team last week on the advanced training that was really helped out a lot. So I just said I'd relay for them, just how much they appreciate it. It was really good.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. So cool. All right. Well, everybody have a great weekend. And then obviously need anything, let me know, and I'll see you in Pop Drop.
Okay, thanks.
All right. See you guys. Thanks.